Did you know that some animals have a lot more females than males? For a long time, I thought that most organisms had pretty equal numbers of males and females, just like humans. But one day, when I was taking a class about parasites, I found out that some organisms have many more females than males. We were looking at malaria parasites under the microscope and learning how to tell male and female malaria parasites apart. Even though malaria parasites are tiny, they have only one cell and live inside the red blood cells of their host. They have separate male and female cells. As I looked at them under the microscope, I noticed that there didn't seem to be as many males in the infection as there were females. It turns out that this is pretty common for malaria parasites. So I asked the professor why. Scientists always like to ask why, and not surprisingly, I wasn't the first person to wonder why some organisms have sex ratios that are so different from our own. In fact, scientists have thought about this question a lot, because many organisms have female-biased sex ratios, though most of these organisms are so small that we wouldn't usually notice them, like parasitic wasps that lay their eggs in the larvae of other insects, and tiny mites that use hummingbirds to shuttle them between the flowers where they live. So why do these things have such strange sex ratios? It all comes down to babies. One thing that all these little organisms have in common is that they live in little patches, like islands that are widely separated. Another thing they have in common is that they all produce lots of babies in those patches, and all those babies grow up in the patch together. When the new generation is all grown up, they also mate within the patch and make more babies, and here's the important part. Because most of their potential mates are their brothers and sisters, and because one brother can mate with all of his sisters, producing more daughters gives you more grandbabies to pass your genes on to in the next generation. But if producing lots of daughters gives lots of grand offspring, why do many organisms, like people and peacocks, have such equal numbers of the sexes? The answer is that when organisms don't live in patches and don't usually mate with their brothers and sisters, competition between unrelated males for mates complicates things. In this case, whether producing more sons or daughters pays off more depends on the sex ratio of the rest of the population. If there are more females around and a mother has a son, she gets more grandchildren than she would have if she had produced a daughter. The opposite is true if there are more males around. Then producing a daughter gives more grandchildren. In the end, it balances out, so there are roughly equal numbers of each. Sex ratios may be balanced or biased, but in the end, the best sex ratio is the one that makes the most babies. Isn't science sexy?